All right, everyone, welcome back to the Higher for Longer podcast. My name is Mason, and today we have some interesting news coming out of Jackson Hole. We had Jerome Powell speaking. He gave a speech covering his outlooks on inflation, as well as some insight into potential policy that we may see out of the Federal Reserve. The reason that is interesting to me is because that is one of the main things that I personally track in my own investment strategy. Central bank policy has the ability to inflect overall market cycles due to just the amount of stimulus or restrictiveness that they can force onto the economy here in the United States. So let's go ahead and jump right into Jerome Powell's thoughts and my own analysis of them. All right, so to jump right in, Jerome Powell goes on to summarize the drawdowns in inflation that we have seen here in the United States. He goes on to talk about core, PCE, and PCE. Both of these metrics are now below the federal funds rate. That is important because obviously that shows that policy is now in a restrictive enough position for the Fed. And I have a chart on screen. This is from Bloomberg. And these metrics are both something that the Fed has been watching primarily, and they have even said that in previous press conferences. So this is some good data that we can take and see that it is likely that the Fed is pushing inflation in the direction that they like. But now, to go on with what Jerome Powell said, Jerome goes into the slowing economy. That it is interesting that he actually notes that, because one of the primary things that has come up in previous speeches and press conferences has been how resilient the economy is. The fact that he notes the slowing is, in my opinion, worth taking note of. It's still important to remember, though, that he is not talking about cutting rates at all. And that is important to me because the market has been pricing that in for the end of this year. But I actually saw a tweet that is on screen now that rate cuts are beginning to be priced out by the market. And assuming those rate cuts continue to be seen as unnecessary, it is likely that we will continue to see the bear steepener that is currently in play in the markets continue to take place. And the reason that we need to take note of that is because obviously a bear steepener is likely to have a negative effect on risk assets, which is mostly the markets and areas that I like to place my own personal bets, especially risky in the crypto market. One thing that I actually took a note of as well is that Jerome Powell actually goes on to say that risk management will be important. And that actually made me laugh out loud, because I wonder if he is speaking directly to the market in that sense, or if he is talking about managing the risks of over-tightening or under-tightening policy, which he actually does go on to discuss those risks later in the speech. And that is important because obviously we don't want the economy to be over-tightened and pushed into a strong decline. That would be less ideal. But we also do not want inflation to come back and us have to start this process all over again. And on the topic of inflation, Jerome Powell actually does talk about the potential for more rate increases if the data that comes out in the future is less favorable towards the Fed's targets. More rate hikes would definitely be something that the market is not ready for, in my opinion, and I believe that that would catch people off guard and likely lead to downside in the market, just because the market would be pricing in even worse potential depth of a slowdown or recession. Now on to my last couple takeaways from Jerome Powell himself. One thing that I still note, and this is something that I've heard Powell say since I began watching his press conferences and actually taking note of them, he is still saying until the job is done. And I think that is an important thing, because I don't think Jerome Powell will flinch. I believe he is ready to hold the rates higher for longer. Interesting enough, the name of my show actually came from Federal Reserve policy and Federal Reserve rhetoric, saying that they will hold rates higher for longer. So that's how I got the name. And Jerome Powell actually brings it up here again as well. Powell says that the Fed will act carefully. Now, carefully just probably means that they're going to take all data into account before they make their decisions. And obviously that's what we would expect out of an institution like the Federal Reserve. So those are my main takeaways just from notes, but now I will go into my own personal thoughts and how I am likely to play in the future. So now on to the fun stuff, and that is, what does all of this central bank rhetoric mean for us as market participants? In my opinion, the main thing markets are trying to figure out is what kind of economic situation is coming up in the future. Are we going to experience a soft landing? Are we going to experience a hard landing? Which is it going to be? In my opinion, it is never the most drastic outcomes. I believe that we are likely to fall somewhere in the middle of those two ends of the spectrum, and that would likely lead to the slowdown in growth and the slowdown in the labor market that Powell and other speakers have mentioned in their own press conferences or speeches or comments to media. So, assuming a shallow recession or slowdown of some kind, we can assume a fall in asset prices. I believe the soft landing Goldilocks era has truly been priced into the market as we sit right now. Stocks have begun to correct, some more than others. AI stocks still up, may have some downside in them. I believe a decent amount of downside in them. Nvidia, I heard, is like hundreds of times PE multiples. That's absolutely insane. Hard to believe that sticks around in a environment where we have slow growth and slow labor markets. Assuming we get that slowdown, in my opinion, that is the time where I'm looking to deploy as much money as I possibly can. With that said, I've already been dollar cost averaging into the markets. I believe that I'm not able to catch exact bottoms, but I can deploy money over a good time frame to give myself the best shot at getting great returns and minimizing my own losses. As I already noted, the bond market is beginning to price out the rate cuts that it had priced in for the end of the year. I believe that will be interesting to watch. And watching the bond market is something that I know I've talked about on here a couple times, but it's just a market that I find really interesting. I would love to discuss that with anyone in the comments. If you have any insights into the bond market, or if you think I'm wrong and higher for longer is not the most likely outcome, please feel free, leave a comment. Let's discuss. With the Fed projecting bad times ahead, I believe that we should also expect bad times ahead. The old phrase, "don't fight the Fed," I believe is still worth taking note of at this time, just because I think it makes sense that with these high rates beginning to hit the economy and people actually having to pay interest on these higher rates will have its effect. It just takes time. These long cycles take so much time to play out, and most people expect things to happen too quickly. So remember to be patient and just take note of the markets and let the markets tell you what they are telling you. Don't try to force your own narratives or force your own perspectives on the market. Just stay focused and stick to your plan. My plan is to dollar cost average and continue to take advantage of dips. So with all of that said, let me know in the comments below, what are your opinions on what Jerome Powell said. Let me know your opinions on the market as well. If you think I'm completely wrong, I'm excited to hear why you think that, and I look forward to having a discussion with you down below. Thank you everyone for watching. Have a good day.